Throughout history, freethinkers have outraged the religious with their wacky ideas about the virtues of free speech, reason, and of course, eating babies. Now, God is dying, and it's time to dispose of his remains. From the pits of hell, Satan sends two puppets of the imperialist West and the Zionist Jews against God, Islam, and tiny kittens to bring you their propaganda and conspire for a new world order. This is Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment with Ali Rizvi and Armin Navabi.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment. My name is Ali Rizvi and with me is Armin Navabi. Armin Navabi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm looking at people in the live chat to see who we have here, our patrons live here.
Also with us is the CEO, and are you CEO and what is your title?
President and CEO.
President and CEO. Okay, so that's really, that's huge. Okay, hey, yeah, Susanna.
Yeah, no, I'm of Atheist Republic.
Of Atheist Republic.
Yeah,
so.
I just said President and CEO of the world. No, just AR.
yeah. The world, yeah, AR.
So AR will take over anyways.
Exactly.
Brace yourself.
AR, Ali Rizvi, AR. Yeah, so in any case, this is it. So welcome. So this is like the episode. There's a lot of people really upset about this episode, even though we haven't started it like the last 24 hours.
Wait, how so? How explain? Elaborate.
They just think that the whole premise of the episode is outrageous.
Mm-hmm.
Now, mind you, that some of these are the same people who are very, very upset about the whole gender of a toy potato. I mean, that's been going on for them. But what do you think?
No. Let's start with the whole point that we don't even need to start this episode anymore because they just proved that's our point. So you're saying they were triggered just by the title of this episode.
Yes.
So it's done. Let's go. We proved we just
pack up, boys. We're going home.
We proved our point.
Can't even talk about that. We might get canceled. Yeah. We might get canceled by the anti-woke movement. But anyway, let's talk about seriously. It's not just about that. Okay, so we know that the anti-woke thing. We've all been there. Okay, I mean, Susanna, I think one of the reasons that you're on here is that I think you're going to share what your journey was and maybe summarize that again too for people who didn't hear your episode. And for those who haven't, please go back and listen to when Susanna was our guest and we talked about cults and indoctrination. Susanna is ex-Antifa. All right. So we all have had our history and our issues with, I wrote the whole thing about the regressive left, which is what we used to call the wokeness back then. Mm-hmm. Armin has talked about it a lot. He's fought with me on it. We've had entire episodes dedicated to this. So it's not like, we're coming from a place where we are super, super woke people or anything like that. But I think that, to quote Armin, this is like to Armin's credit. When he gets to a point, he has talked about ex-Muslims being hypocrites. At times when there are elements of hypocrisy. He's talked about people on his side and he tends to call them out when he feels like they're being irrational. And that's actually one of the very few things that I like about you, Armin. I'm kidding. I'm just
Friendship ended.
Right. So now we're seeing this. We saw this hold. We talked about wokeness being a cult here. We talked about it being an illiberal religious ideology, like quasi-religious ideology. But now it seems like the anti-woke movement, this is what I've always called the orgy of overcorrections, right? It is the orgy of overcorrections.
You have such a way with words.
Oh, thank you, milady. No, but it really is. I mean, you have this, for example, all of this Islamic terrorism, and then you had a backlash against it, and they tried to correct for it. Then you had the regressive left to correct for the regressive left. You had this whole sort of this new conservatism and the alt-right thing, and then Trumpism came out of that. In reaction to Trumpism, you had this woke movement, which got crazier and crazier, and more illiberal, and became fascist in its own way, to the extent that Noam Chomsky had to sign a letter condemning it. Okay, And now to correct for that, now we have this anti-woke thing that's becoming just as much of a religion, and they are now canceling people and doing dog piles. What did we call those? Pylons on social media and things like that. On just doing the same thing that they hated on the other side. So what is this? Where does this go, Armin Navabi?
I mean, it's very interesting because let's just be clear. When we talked about the problems with the woke, we're not talking about the left, okay? And some people criticize us for even referring to it as woke, while they themselves called it woke scold or something else, right? Whatever you want to call it. You know, there are some forces within the left which is crazy, and to give credit to the left recognizes that, like they see it and they're like, yeah, these people are insane, right? And most of the left is not like that. We always have said that, right? The debate that we had was this fringe group on the left, how much influence and control they have, even though we recognize that they're a minority in the fringe. The debate between me and Ali was always that whether or not they have, even though they're fringe, whether they have a lot of influence or they have a little influence, right? It's not that we accuse most of the left of being like that, but I was arguing that they have a lot of influence and that they have gone mainstream, right? And some of the things that a lot of people also on the left seem to recognize with the woke side of the left was they seem a lot like the racists and the homophobes on the other side. Like they seem to be focusing on the things that they're, a lot of people on the other, the crazies on the right believe in, right? Which is interesting because now, if you look at how crazy the anti-woke has become, they also seem to become a lot closer to. There's two elements to it, right? We have the anti-woke forces that seem a lot like they have the attributes that we usually associate with the woke side. They get triggered. They want to cancel things, but these are not new. Like it seemed like we're suggesting that the anti-woke is something new. This was always there, right? If you want to think about it from a left-leaning and right-leaning perspective, if you look at it historically, the right was always in favor of cancel culture and getting triggered. We were just not used to it coming from the left, right? But this is mostly a right-wing thing. I mean, when it comes to movies that are too sexy or video games that are supposed to be responsible for apparently all the crimes that need to be canceled, anything that is too LGBT friendly that triggers the right, and historically also when it comes to the most oppressive, the most brutal, the most aggressive ways of canceling people, not canceling them by throwing them out of like social media, but canceling them by putting a few bullets in their head while they're sleeping. That's mostly a right-leaning thing, like historically as well, right? That doesn't mean that we don't get to complain about the woke, okay? I just want to say that this whole a lot of people who jumped on saw what's happening in these fringe movements that are happening in the left, and they saw that, okay, yes, they're fringe, but they seem to be having a lot of influence, and they're calling it out. The people who jumped on the bandwagon, because it became so popular, it kept on growing and growing. And now what we're seeing is that the people that are jumping on that bandwagon are the people that are actually they have those problems that the left is supposed to fight against, rightfully so. So what we're saying is that the left is responsible for a lot of movements that have made the world a better place, right? Gay rights movement, trans rights movements, women rights movements, protection of minorities. These were movements that the right doesn't have these, right, under its belt, right? There's not much from right-wing politics that has been contributed to the world that we could be like, ooh, yes, this is a major achievement. But the left has that. This is why the reason why we criticize the left is because we think the left is worth defending, right? I don't see that much, like it's supposed, like the rights. Okay, I'll get back to that later. But the woke was, because these are popular movements, because they got a lot of popularity, the woke jump on the bandwagon, and it was doing overcorrection. And now this overcorrection, correcting that as overcorrection, is being overcorrected by anti-SJWs. But the thing is these anti-SJWs are not correcting the woke. They're also they're trying to correct things that shouldn't be corrected. They are correcting the left, the genuine good movements that coming out of the left. That's what they're actually trying to correct, right? So as much as we say, like, for example, people on the woke, they find things that are not racist and they accuse it of being racist. They find things that are not transphobic and they accuse it of being transphobic. They find things that is not homophobic and they accuse it of being homophobic. As much as we want to call those things out, what the anti-SJW has become is people that are genuinely racist and people that are genuinely homophobic, people that are genuinely transphobic, and they're trying to use us pushing back against this overcorrection as a way to provide a cover for their racism and their transphobia and their homophobia when they get called out, to be like, oh, this is just the woke coming after me. Like, no, it's not. You're just a goddamn racist. Susanna, you wanted to say something?
Well, I disagree. I think there are flavors to it, right? I don't think all of the people who criticize, there are flavors to it. So I say critical social justice because it's usually what I'm most critical of is social justice that has a critical theory flavor to it. So I think, broadly speaking, I think you're overgeneralizing. I think, broadly speaking, there are two camps. There are the people who are trying to use your language, correct the left, are people who are just like, have always been conservatives, are conservatives, and they have a broader battle against the left itself, and they're just jumping upon these obvious weak points, these obvious absurdities to push their agenda. There's a lot of that. Let me finish. But then there's also a lot of anti-SJWs. I don't even know if they would characterize themselves using that label, who are just, well, before Dave Rubin made it a cringy term, like classical liberals or old school liberals. Like, they're not trying to correct the left or leftism itself. Like, they're trying to make it better. They're trying to course correct. There's a difference, right? So I don't think you can say that everyone who criticizes social justice is actually racist, is actually pushing for racism. There's a lot of variety. It's very heterogeneous who is pushing forward this dialogue of criticism about these various ideologies that people are finding to be counterintuitive. And to touch on something that you said earlier in terms of, how, the woke are very similar to the right in many ways, I think one of the broadest similarities is a very puritanical culture. And they just come, this puritanism just comes in different forms, different flavors. Like, obviously, well, maybe not so obviously, for the right, it generally tends to be a religious conservatism. For the left, it's more of a social purity, in a way, not to offend or to be, I mean, it seems like so overly used, but to be politically correct, to not be offensive. This incessant demand for purity is what drives forward, I think, the most toxic aspects of those different flavors of Puritanism.
Okay, but here's the problem. Here's one reason why the Puritanism coming from the right is a lot more toxic, I think, because when it comes to the extreme versions of this Puritanism, what the far left demands is for you to bend the knee to certain ideas, okay, and then you would be okay. What the Puritanism from the right is, there's no bending the knee. You're a problem because you're black. You're a problem because you are gay. you're a problem because you're trans. Like, there is no way out. And the correction for that is for you to be removed, from society.
Well,
or
you're
accept
talking
that
about
I'm a problem, or accept that you're a problem, like the Dave Rubin, when he says yes, like he accepts. He's like, Ben Shapiro, you didn't want to attend my wedding, that's fine. So just accept that you are.
I mean, Armin, I think you are talking about like the furthest right.
Yeah, I'm talking about the furthest right.
Let's be clear. Like, there are right people who are anti-SJW, but they're like, no, you're a problem.
I was very specific about saying, guys, I'm not generalizing. I'm being very careful to say the most extreme version of the right-wing Puritanism versus the most extreme version of left-wing Puritanism, right?
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Yeah, so I want to say, I kind of, Suzanne, I love what you said about purity. Okay, like that's, I think that nails it. And I want to draw an analogy here. Okay, so this is something that we did. Armin knows this. I know this. Like, when we started writing about Islam, like 10 years ago, 12 years ago, whenever we did, and being critical about it, we also eventually started getting a lot of support from a lot of right-wing anti-Muslim bigots, like people who had a problem with Muslims and who were concerned about Muslim immigration, who thought that all Muslims, okay, well, if you're a Muslim, then you're subscribing to it. Even if they didn't really look at it as that, that people could sometimes just be born in Muslim families and there's an identity aspect to it. They wouldn't look at it that way. So they were genuine anti-Muslim bigots. And there were times when I wanted to shake off that element, right? Because they were hijacking. I remember the one thing that I wrote about a long time ago was I was talking about the difference between criticizing ideas and demonizing people, and I said something like about smoking. I said smoking may be a filthy habit, but that doesn't mean that all smokers are filthy people. And I said this to illustrate the whole idea that you shouldn't demonize Muslims. And then I heard that, like, years later, right? And this is something that I think Majid Nawaz also quoted me on in Islam: The Future of Tolerance. Now, a few years after that, this Tommy Robinson says the same thing. He goes up there and he tweets us, smoking and smoking. And I was looking at this, I was like, Jesus.
Tommy Robinson stole your quote?
He stole my quote. Yeah. So he wrote that. He's like, smoking isn't. So, so I looked at it and I thought,
Lauren Chen stole my quote.
Huh?
Lauren Chen stole my quote as well.
Yeah, that's happened. By the way, we've had loads of quotes stolen. A lot of times I'd let it go because the people who are stealing it are good and I like them. And many times they do credit you. But in this case, what happened was that this was a guy who I completely disagreed with. And I know a lot of people, a lot of people do like him and everything. I don't agree with him on it. And that's not the kind of thing that I wanted. So I think the same thing that's happening, what Armin's talking about, right, is that there is a legitimate criticism of the woke, and I'm not going to call it the woke left for the same reasons Armin talked about. I think left is a different thing, just fundamentally different values. And now there are loads of people who are kind of piling on who genuinely do hate. I mean, they don't just have a problem with a legitimate debate about whether trans athletes should be able to compete against their biological non-counterparts, right? It's not about that. They genuinely hate the idea that anybody should be trans or anybody should be gay or anybody should be any of these different identities.
Well, I mean, that's the kind of one that if we open, I'm going to be able to talk about it for 1 hour. I do want to talk about how there's this. I think a lot of people misunderstand what we're saying, right? So, for example, I'm not taking back what I was saying before when it comes to wokeism going mainstream, okay? Because I think what people don't understand is that I clarified that when in my disagreements with Ali before as well. Something going mainstream and something taking over are not the same thing, okay? You could still be fringe and you could go mainstream, right? You could still be a minority, not representing your entire side. You could be a small movement, you could be a fraction of everything else. But if you are being represented on, mainstream news by Coca-Cola, by Viacom, by government funded museums, by Disney. Okay, that's you going mainstream. Is it taken over? No. Okay, I think so. These are not a contradiction, right? So most of the left, if you point to this, a lot of the stuff that we point to, and we're like, this is what, I don't know, Coke has done, or this is what this school is like teaching people, that you need to end being whiteness, or something like that.
White abolition.
White abolition, right? And most of the left, you show them this stuff, they're like, what the hell is that? Okay, and they don't like it. And not guys, it's not even most of the left that doesn't like this. Most of the far left also looks at this and goes, and me and Susanna, like, for example, a lot of far lefty content creators, and they cringe. They hate identity politics. They see a difference between, and they think this is they see all of this a problem with capitalism, right? So this is like
a lot of times it comes down to corporatism.
Yeah, so wokeism going mainstream, this is like corporate wokeism versus the far left, and the far left does not endorse most of this, right?
Well,
and they call it, okay, so there's different sides, right? Some of the far left do, some of them don't, some of them push for it, some of them don't. But at the end of the day, yes, it doesn't represent the left. It doesn't represent even a lot of the far left, but it has gone mainstream, okay? Just because you could see giant corporations pushing for it. And here's the thing, these giant corporations are not even wrong to do so. These are for-profit companies, and they have done an analysis, and they have realized that there's three positions that you could have, okay? You could either be seen as a company with right-leaning views, right? A company with neutral views, and a company with left-leaning views, okay? They discovered that if you are a company that is associated with right-leaning views, you're going to lose sales. If you are either neutral or considered to be left-leaning company, even if some people hate you for being left-leaning, it seems like you don't lose sales, right? So it's a safer bet, because if you're neutral, you might be accused of being right-leaning. The safer bet is just to do some pro-trans, pro-gay, get equity, hire some people to come. It doesn't really matter if it works, okay? The intention is that, like, when they have like equity offices and they bring like diversity training and stuff like that, they intend, like, people, like, their studies that show like a lot of these don't work, but it does work if you look at the intention. The intention is, don't get sued if something happens, because we can show that we tried our best to stop them, and also it's safer if look like you're a left-leaning company. Right-leaning people getting triggered doesn't seem to translate in losing sales. So if your profit motive, if you're focusing on profit, this seems to be a good strategy. This whole idea of go woke, go broke doesn't seem to be backed up by data, unless like you could find anecdotes. But go on, Susanna.
Well, the thing about wokeness being corporate, or that's why far lefties hate it. I don't think that's completely accurate. So a lot of this stuff is academic. This comes out of academia. This comes out of pretty highbrow academic circles, and then just through the decades, it's reached our mainstream culture. But the thing is, it's been corporatized. It's been dietized to be palatable and for a corporate setting. And so a lot of the far left criticism comes from these various academics who are making a fat stack out of this. That's so they are angry at these academics for capitalizing on this. But there was very good criticism that Vosh had recently when talking about this leak from Coca-Cola. So for those you don't know, there was a diversity training from Coca-Cola that was leaked to Twitter. And I believe it was actually technically like extra materials that you weren't necessarily required, but Anyways, so what it was some slideshows from Robin DiAngelo, the author of White Fragility, which is like a giant book of a Kafka trap. So, and she is like enemy number one for both sides of the woke criticism.
Right.
Mostly because she's a white woman who's the highest paid person in terms of teaching people about how to not be racist. So she's been canceled herself.
And the Kafka trap, that is a big thing. Like the entire book, you just went by that, but it is a Kafka trap, and so you guys can Google what Kafka trap is.
Yes, it basically means that her claims are unfalsifiable. Because she's constructed it in a way that if you object to it, you are actually proving her point further. So there is no way that you can properly object without her someone with her mindset through her lens.
Too much detail right now on that.
Okay, anyway, so what this Coke slide was it contained language like be less white and characteristics of whiteness, which was like productivity or like entitlement, all sorts of things. And Vosh had a very good criticism of it, which I think is completely fair, which is, these are academic ideas. Whiteness constructed within this lens of academic literature, it's an institution. It's not individual. But the main problem with this PowerPoint slide was that it was telling individuals to be less white when they are talking about the construction of an identity. And so I think that was a very good criticism.
But I have a problem with that.
Very lefty.
I appreciate that. I mean, if you look at like lefty content creators, they don't like Robin DiAngelo, which is number one used in corporate America, or academia or whatever. She's the number one. Number two is Ibram X. Kendi. They don't like him either, okay? Like they think like this is basically, they're anti-capitalist, so they think like this is all capitalism going woke, which is ridiculous. So they don't like this either. But I mean, I don't agree with this as from an academic perspective. I think this language wouldn't be tolerated if it was. They're like, oh, this is not for the layman. Like they're thinking like, of course, the average white person is justified to think that this is racism against them if you say cancel whiteness. What is it? What did they say?
Be less white.
Be less white, right?
Which would be completely unacceptable if that was in a corporate slideshow, literally regarding any other ethnicity.
Yeah, but this is not us saying this. This is also the far lefty content creators are saying this is like insane. You shouldn't have that. But they say this is only makes sense to have it in academia. But I mean, to be fair, even in academia, if you had that be less black and you were talking about black culture, for example, and instead of saying, if you want to say there's problems with black culture and you say like, oh, we need to be less black. I mean, even if that was in academia, people would be like, what the hell? Why are academics talking about this like this, right? So even academia, this language shouldn't. Like, I mean, if your language, like a lot of people, for example, are saying like toxic masculinity, right? If you actually look at what it's about, you can see like, okay, it's not as bad as it sounds, okay? It is legitimately talking about things that are real issue, okay? But the label is bad. The label is bad, whether it's being used in mainstream or whether it's being used in academia. It just doesn't sound right. You just
defund the police. Like it's the same thing. It's a perfectly legitimate topic to talk about and debate. Whatever side of it.
Terrible marketing.
Messaging is really important. If there's one thing I've learned in the last 4 years with the Trump thing, is messaging is really important. And one of the things that I remember when Sam Harris used to say, listen, if you're presented with reason, you are helpless. You just have to accept what you have because there's nobody, you can't speak in the face of reason. And we know that that's not true now. We know that what it means, it's like emotions trump reason all the time. Storytelling and messaging trumps it all the time. And you just have to have better messaging. You just have to, when you say build the wall, that means build the wall. When you're saying drill baby drill, that means drill baby drill. Those are, even if we completely oppose those messages, that is effective and good messaging. It means what it says.
Yes.
And this is one of the biggest downfalls of the left, I think.
But I have a question for Ollie.
Mm.
So because me and Armin are both in Twitter jail, I haven't been able to keep up as much. So you're a little bit more tapped in to things socially. So what do you think has been one of the juiciest anti-woke outrages you've seen recently? And let's dig into that a little bit.
The juiciest. You mean, okay? So you have to understand, like, my.
We're talking about Mr. Potato Head. I don't know what this is.
You don't know about this? Okay, so.
No.
Oh my God!
You don't know about
this? I get to talk about this. Yeah. So I'm not that tapped into the social thing. I look at most of it as entertainment. I really don't take Twitter that seriously, because a lot of Twitter. This is another thing. A lot of Twitter is people talking about other people reacting. There's like, I can't believe people are upset about this. I can't believe.
Guys, can we just help? I have a lot to say. Can you get to the point of?
Yeah, I'm trying to get to the point. Okay. So So what happened here is basically the toy, Mr. Potato Head, has been. They have decided to just go with Potato Head. Now this toy is just going to be called Potato Head. They're removing the Mr. Now they do have a Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head. The package that still Hasbro did clarify that we still have those too. But there will be a Potato Head. The main nucleus toy, the main toy that was there, is just going to be Potato Head, and
it's an agender potato.
Yeah, and there is a. It's a potato. All potatoes.
It's a potato.
Potato.
Okay, guys.
Yeah.
Okay. So a lot of right-leaning people are now coming out, and they're like, "Oh my God, you guys have gone insane. This is the end of the Western society, everything." Okay, so even if this is ridiculous, and we have other examples as well, right? We have Disney firing one of the most popular actresses, I forgot her name, because
very popular. It's like
no,
the most popular. I forgot. What was her name? I can't remember.
Well, he can't remember anyone's name.
Yeah, I mean, it's still popular. I don't know celebrities that well. She's still very popular. Just because I don't know them doesn't make them. Just because I don't know their name doesn't make them not popular. So because she said because of her conservative views, conservative views that most conservatives believe in. So as average, she's been fired. So we have Coke coming out with this leak. We see that they're telling their employees to be less white. We have more and more stuff coming from schools, showing kids, teaching kids about, how
the 8 white identities.
The 8 white identities.
That was one school in New York, to be clear.
That was okay. That's the point I'm trying to get to. Okay, you have this Mr. Potato Head apparently making him just potato. I don't know how do you say it?
Just Potato Head.
Just Potato Head, I guess. I don't know.
Right, and these are this in the Persian accent. It's beautiful. Like
and
potato head.
Let me make my point right now. God damn it.
Potato. Yeah, go on.
Can you guys mute yourself?
No, go on. I won't say anything. I won't interrupt you. Go
ahead. These are anecdotes. Okay, these are anecdotes, and what people don't take into account is, like, as ridiculous these are, the reaction that the right has to these are even more ridiculous than the actual events. Okay, because they constantly get triggered over all of this, right? And these are the good thing about following right-leaning content creator is that whenever these happen, okay, they will find it. They will find it and they will talk about it, right? So everything that we know, every single example of these Wokistani people going extreme, it's been hunted down and covered and made fun of. So everything that is happening, you're seeing, okay? So as much as this means that it has gone mainstream, because we could talk about Viacom, Coca-Cola, right? To me, that's also an indication that that's it. That's all that's all that there is. Because when it comes to the left, when it comes to the right doing the same things, it's constant. Okay, when it comes to people being ostracized for being gay, for being trans, people canceling you or demonizing you by your own family members because you are anti-Trump. When it comes to sex negativity and the constant shaming and demonization, that is so constantly there that if you want to pick each one of these anecdotes and highlight it the same way that we're highlighting the woke going crazy, then it will be non-stop. It will be non-stop there. It's just so much. It's just accepted. Like what we are trying to avoid. Like when we say the wokies are starting to go mainstream, you have to put that in contrast to the influence that Christianity has over politics in the United States, for example, right? The constant presence of that. Okay, that is so much. The in every goddamn church, for example, the things that they're teaching, the things that they're telling children. Like we're looking at, like me and Susanna, for example, Ali, we're looking at Cartoon Network, right? We're looking at Cartoon Network, and we watched something about anti-racism on Cartoon Network we thought that was insane. That we thought like, okay, this is not good. This is wokeism gone too far. Okay. However, that is one thing that was found and highlighted, rightfully so, in contrast to the constant Christian brainwashing on children on Sunday schools every day, all the time, like every week, all the time, like all the Christian schools, all the Catholic schools, all of that out there, right? So I'm not saying don't point this out. I'm not saying it's not going mainstream, because this is Cartoon freaking Network, okay? It is going mainstream. Yeah. But that's compared to something that is already not just mainstream, it's all over, right?
Well, I mean,
brainwashing our children by churches and mosques and synagogues and everything is accepted, and it's so common that you don't even point it out anymore, because everybody accepts it, that it's there. But go on now.
That's the difference. I mean, it's talking, when we're talking about mainstream, things going mainstream, what does that mean, and what exactly are we talking about? I mean, when we talk about universities censoring lecturers, right? Like, I can't come, I'm, Richard Spencer can't speak at Berkeley, or, Ben Shapiro can't speak at Berkeley. Well, try to get gay rights activists to go to Bob Jones University or Liberty University, or any of these sort of like conservative leaning universities that they've set up.
Though. Those are private universities.
Sure, but still, like, I think that's this idea that if there is anything sort of conservative leaning, the idea that the left is censoring conservative speech and the conservatives are for free speech, right? Private or public university, right? If you are conservative and you're saying that, I'm for free speech, and you are not allowing speakers, and they don't allow speakers, they have a much lower threshold, right, for getting rid of certain speakers they don't agree with, then this is just something that has been so common and so in place for so many years that we don't even notice it. Armin's absolutely right about that. The other thing I want to say, Susanna, and before you talk, is this, that right now, right, the woke side of, even if you look at the elections and the way things happened, mainstream liberals rejected the woke side of things. They rejected things that were even woke adjacent, like the AOC's campaigning and all of that stuff, the sort of really, really leftist stuff, and the Bernie Sanders side of things was resoundingly beaten in the primaries. Right? There were states where Biden got like every single county of the state, and Bernie didn't win a single one. This happened he didn't even campaign in Massachusetts, and he won the whole state, even though Elizabeth Warren was from there. Right? So there was the mainstream liberals have rejected this. Okay, how the Harper's letter was signed by Noam Chomsky, but that's a really, really big thing, because now Noam Chomsky is considered too centrist. So there are a lot of. On the other hand, when you look at the conservatives, not only do you have Trump in the White House, but you still have people Like, remember when Colin Kaepernick got down on his knee because he wanted to protest the national anthem? He wanted to protest because of systemic racism. He got down on a knee.
Police brutality.
Police brutality, and so technically police brutality. He wanted to protest it. He got down on a knee, right? And Nike supported him, and everybody thought this was like this just woke outrage. So this guy, everybody's lifting him up. The corporations have sold out to the woke mob and all this stuff. The guy got down on one knee. That's it. That's all he did. And then you have these Capitol riots, and your Ted Cruz's and a significant part of the mainstream Republican Party that until very recently had the presidency, had won 75 million presidential votes, and has a majority in the Supreme Court. These people, they still think that this was okay. This is just, the guy, he shouldn't have done this. It was a bad thing. Slap on the wrist. Right? That's what we mean by, and Armin's right. To talk about something being mainstream and to talk about something actually taking over, right, is much worse. And on the far right, they have taken over. They've overrun the mainstream. It's beyond just going mainstream. They've overrun it. Okay?
Well, in terms of control they have of the Republican Party, like 29% of Republicans, as polled in January, 29% of Republicans believe QAnon is real.
Well, yeah,
that's not like a split up percentages of Republicans. That's almost 30% of Republicans across the board believe QAnon. It's like it's a huge movement within that side of the aisle. That party, it's huge. I will quickly disagree with Armin that every instance is highlighted, and that I think that because I haven't seen anything about what the stuff that's going on at my institution, right? And there is stuff going on in my institution, so it's not every instance. And I know Armin didn't mean it that absolutely. But I think what it is that it picks up so much steam and people get so quote unquote triggered by it because it reflects stuff that goes on in their life or their workplace that they don't feel like they can talk about, that they don't feel like they can push back against themselves. And so when they see instances of it in other places, it picks up steam because it's something that they can collect around. Say, I feel this way too. I feel outraged too. But in my life, I can't talk about it. I can't push back because I'll get fired. I'll face consequences in my workplace. Blah, blah, blah. So that's part of the reason why I think it picks up so much steam, is because of people's own felt powerlessness as an individual in their isolated situation.
All right, I need to go through four things really quick. First of all, I agree, Susanna pointing out that how much support QAnon has on the right, and how many people on the right also think that the election was stolen and crap like that, shows that the crazies on the right are a higher percentage of the right than the crazies on the left. Okay, so that's one thing. Also, when it comes to Ali mentioning that the right being for free speech, again, the only reason why the right now pretends to be for free speech is because they don't control culture. This whole idea of facts don't care about your feelings is a losing game, because the facts are that feelings matter. And if the right has been ignoring control over arts and culture and stuff, and now they're noticing how far behind they are at their presence in all these areas, and now they're crying about why they're not there. Well, because you said facts don't care about your feelings. Well, now you don't have influence. So they get to see how it feels for their speech to be controlled. But don't be fooled. If they were in charge of culture, they would be censoring things a lot more aggressively than the left ever would. I don't think, to criticize Ali a little bit, I don't think it's fair to say, when you say Bernie Sanders was defeated, I don't think Bernie Sanders represents the cultural left. I think he represents the economic left. So him being defeated is not, I don't think, any indication of, I do think that the left is mostly anti-wokeism, but I don't think that Biden winning over Bernie represent that. I don't think Bernie was. I do think that Bernie said a few wokey things, but overall he stayed away from it. It was one really cringy thing that he said.
He'll carry water for it too.
We're not talking about.
But no,
does
let me
represent
finish.
the
Let me finish my fourth
Yeah,
point,
yeah.
and then you guys could say. Also, what is okay? Yes. So I also want to point to the fact when it comes to freedom of expression, the mainstream right is worse than the woke left, right? So I'm not even comparing mainstream right with mainstream left. Even if you compare just the average right-leaning people, not far right, the average right-leaning, the level of censorship that they would be for is worse than the most fringe, craziest. Like, what do I'm not talking about leftist people. I'm talking about far left people. What do they want? They want you to like lose all your platforms, never be given if you are not on their side. You can't speak at this
Ostracized.
university. Ostracized. Don't be invited anywhere. Blah 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 blah. Okay, and that's not the left. That's the far left. Okay, average right-leaning people support think like a lot of people on the right support Trump for saying yes, let's make flag burning illegal. Let's make flag in direct opposition to the Constitution that they say that they pretend to defend. Oh, let's use libel laws against journalists that we don't like. Oh yeah, let's roughen up. Let's support Trump, who says roughen up people who are who don't use violent. Oh yeah, just average throw around using language that suggests that we are okay with using violence against people that are ideologically opposed to us, right? And yeah, we keep supporting the guy. This is not this is mainstream Republicans. Okay, and even if half of them believe this stuff, agree with this stuff, you don't have this. You don't have this even in the wokey left. Okay, I mean, even among the woke left, they don't say oh yeah, let's punch people.
That's not true.
No, half. It's half. Okay, so we do have punching Nazis, good night far right, stuff like that. Okay, but that's half of the far left, not half of the left. Okay, but we have half of mainstream right supporting somebody that says roughen up, ban flag burning, use libel laws against journalists, and roughen up the people who are here to protest against me. Okay, so it's at a completely different scale. This is, and again, this is without them having. Imagine if these people had the same control that the left has over media, over Cartoon Network, Disney, universities. I'm telling you, I'm almost certain that if these institutions were run by right-leaning people, right now they're mostly influenced by left-leaning people, it would have been forget gender studies, just suggesting to people, I'm pretty sure in universities it would be not allowed for you to even suggest that gayness is a thing. You have to it would be part of their curriculum to show that being trans is it's an abomination. That would be part of the university curriculum or something like that. Biblical, evolution would be
family values.
Family values. Evolution would be challenged. All of this would be global warming would be thought to be as a hoax or something like that. It would be by far as much as all the problems that you have right now with left controlling universities. It would be by far worse if the right was controlling universities.
Yeah,
Ali, go on.
No, I was saying that these are exactly the points that I was trying to make in our episode with Obaid, right? In addition to some other ones that we disagreed on. But I actually don't think even in that Armin and I specifically disagreed all that much as Obaid disagreed with what I was saying, at least.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, this is the thing, and it's turning around. And one of the big things that's happening right now is there's that book Cynical Theories, which actually is a really good book
by James Lindsay and Helen Pluckrose.
And so James and Helen are on sort of different sides of this. James went and
I read it. I think it's a bit too alarmist. I think it brings up some good points. Every chapter starts with some good points, and at the end of it seems they're taking over.
So that part of it
for you.
So this
I
is
think that they have a very specific lens within living within academia. And if you're in academia, it's a whole different fever pitch.
It is.
And I think that's fair. In academia,
Right.
it's on a totally different level.
End
So
of every chapter
actually,
is like it's coming out of academia, and it's
I'll tell you.
hide your kids, hide your wives.
I want to kind of, I want to say like, so Armin's kind of right about this, because a lot of what it is they talk about this, critical theory, and there's the foundational elements of it, the history of where it started, and the problems with it, and how it's like entering into academia, and there's like legitimate professors and everything that are subscribing to this stuff. Okay, but then looking at everything through that lens, how the main criticism of theirs is that people who are anti-racist, or the woke people, look at everything through the lens of race. Well, the people who are anti-critical theory look at everything through the lens of critical theory. It's a single issue, and it seems like they are completely like that is a filter through which they're looking at everything. And that's also another, and it's kind of interesting because this is January 4th, so I have this tweet, so James Lindsay had tweeted, quote, "Best thing you can do for your company in 2021 is fire all the woke people and dissolve all diversity and inclusion committees," end quote.
Fire all the woke people?
So
holy crap, man.
So I kind of tongue-in-cheek sort of responded to it, and I put in quotes. I was like, "Oh, fire people for what they believe, because we shouldn't be firing people for what they believe." I mean, that's basically what he's kind of saying.
Amazing.
Wait, did he hit you in the replies?
Yeah, he said that it was a straw man, and then everybody told him that it wasn't. Everybody told him it was a joke.
I'm going to admit something about critical theory once I actually studied it. That even when I was reading that book, which is supposed to be anti-critical theory, when I was like reading it, I was like, you know what? There's some good points here.
No, because
there's some good point. I mean, I feel like, you know what? Like these people were like, I mean, not all of it I thought it was good points, but I was like, this is like, it's worth considering that perspective.
Yes,
and maybe like in academia, this stuff is interesting and useful as a way to look at things. Maybe it's just like average people using it, it just goes wrong. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Like,
right.
So even James Lindsay will say that there are things that critical theorists like get right, or they have good points, or that they have a perspective on things that do a better job at addressing things than, say, like classical liberal perspective could. I've heard him say that. So I would have agreements, again, critical theory is a lens or a tool, but a lot of problem comes with the application.
Yeah, but to be fair, I'm not saying everything. I like there are a lot of things that is just beyond reasonable, even when it comes to application. You know what I mean? Like there are some writers there that seem to be like, oh yeah, objective reality is not a thing. Like that also does exist there. I'm not endorsing everything in there, but just because there are many things there that I don't like, that doesn't mean there weren't like some good points. This
is the reason I love you, Armin. And I knew that as soon as I said that, he would allow me to interrupt. I mean, that's one thing that's beautiful. Yeah, okay. No, I'm kidding. So but this really is, and I mean this genuinely, is that you're right. Like, you read the book and there are legitimate points, even if and it's the same thing. It's like, when people talk about Marxism, like Marxism was this evil thing. Like, you read about Marxism, you read about the history of Marxism, why it started up, there were some good foundational ideas there. Now, did it work? Did it jive with human nature? Did it get corrupted later on? Did it eventually go awry? Yes, in a lot of ways it did. But there are some basic elements, and there's some foundational elements to Marxism that we still have in our societies today.
Right? And
it's like that with all of these ideologies. This is how you don't think tribally. But go ahead.
No, we studied Marx in university and sociology, and he'd think everything that he's wrong about, it came to us with hindsight and data that he didn't have.
Yeah.
Like you know what I mean? Like the guy was a genius, to be fair, and he was wrong about a lot, like how things work in the real world economically, right? But we got that because years of data after he died. Like it's easy for us to be like, oh, Marx was wrong, and because we see the evidence. Go on, Susanna, you want to say something?
Well,
but we have to answer questions after this.
Yeah. In terms, just to kind of circle back in terms of like, has anti-wokeness gone too far? Or as I subtitled the video, when keeping it real goes wrong. So I think my friend Nick said on Twitter, and he's actually a patron of the show. So if you're listening, Nick, hi. He was like talking on Twitter to someone, I can't remember, about like James Lindsay basically devolving into various conspiracy theories like publicly. And he basically said like, this is one of the things that happens when you're defined by what you fight against, but not by what you fight for. So I think this ties back to Ali's point about being certain individuals or figures being single issue. Like it can be reactionary. It's not an active stance. It's like, okay, so this is what you're against, but what are you proactively bringing to the table, right? And I thought that was a very good point. One of the ways that I see people go wrong in this criticism of many legitimate ways of ideas and ideologies are absurd and harmful, is that they are defined by fighting against it. They're not necessarily proactively offering something in its stead. They don't necessarily have something that they fight for. And I mean, quick plug, this is why I like our work at Atheist Republic, because we are very clear about what we fight for, being you guys as well, enlightenment values, that is the name of this show. Yeah, that's what drives us. It's not that we are just defined in reaction to something. It's actually we're taking up this fight in defense of something and in promotion of something better.
All right, we need to go through the questions really fast.
Yes,
let's go through the questions.
Well, first thing, this isn't okay. Wait, okay, never mind. Go ahead. Shuvo Das is saying, would you consider the Capitol building attack an anti-woke movement? If so, then not only has anti-wokeness gone too far, it's a threat to peaceful democracy.
No, not really anti-woke. That was crazier than anti-woke.
I would say no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, as bad. Okay, so anti-woke has gone too far, but that movement is something even a lot more toxic than just the anti-woke movement. That is like full-on
a break from reality.
These are the people who are a good example of what Armin was talking about. Is like the people who have kind of hijacked the legitimate anti-woke, critics.
I think it's separate. I mean, it's separate. QAnon. It's and when I say it's a break from reality, I don't mean postmodernists to object the idea of an objective reality. I mean that they have devolved into conspiracy, that there's like a 5D, the JFK Jr. is going to come from the future and save us, like that level.
Radical leftist.
Okay, so let me put this in perspective. These people are not the anti-woke people, but these people are the reasons why the anti-woke people don't understand that the right has a bigger problem, right? So that they are not. So the anti-woke need to realize that as bad as the woke people are on the left, the right has a bigger problem, which is these people. So that's how they are different. Okay, so I think Jeremy agrees with me. Jeremy, you want to read this?
Yeah, so Jeremy's saying, I don't think the comparison of Bernie versus Biden to woke versus anti-woke is fair. There's a lot of Biden woke people and anti-woke Bernie people, and Bernie campaigned mostly on economic stuff. I'm glad you said this. Because I was going to respond to Armin on that. That I do think, that's right. Bernie did campaign mostly on economic stuff. That has been his focus. But when they're in an association of voters in general, like people who do lean towards the whole woke side, Bernie did cater to them, and he did try to get that demographic. And they largely went for Bernie. So there's an association there. And I'm not saying that Bernie himself is. Bernie's actually very anti-identity politics.
Well, he did say one thing, but let's be fair to him. That was the only thing that he said that seemed like very wokey. And I think he never apologized for it, but I think he regretted it. And there's no excuse for it, because people say you're taking it out of context. No, I'm not taking it out of context. Bernie said white people don't know how it feels to be poor. And there's no excuse for saying something like that. And he did say that, but that's the only mostly he didn't do anything like that. That was the only thing.
He got backlash from the woke movement for putting up a Joe Rogan endorsement.
Backlash. I'm saying that I don't think Bernie represents wokeism. But that's the one thing that he said that was absolutely insane. And but everyone makes mistakes.
But he did cater to that demographic.
Yeah.
Okay. The Rational Guard is saying, I think wokeism's power is its infiltration of our way of thinking as individuals, as well as society and institutions. That is a valid use of the term mainstream.
Yep.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's okay. I think that applies to a lot of things. I think this is one idea. The wokeism thing is something that's in there. You know, the radical conservatism, neoconservatism. That's one thing that's in there. I mean, this is what happens at a lot of places, right? And you push back against it. I need to say one thing in response to this, because we always talk about this is James Lindsay types. Like, they keep on going on and on about how this is a threat and it's going to be terrible and there's nothing we can do about it. If you want to do something about it, if you don't like these things, join the DEI, the diversity, equity, inclusion committees in your thing. Especially if you're a person of color who doesn't like this stuff, like myself. I am in this committee and in my company, right?
Exposed.
Yeah.
Guys, you need to, when you're reading these comments, because some people are listening to this on a podcast, you need to say that the Rational Guard is saying, because then the podcast people are going to get confused. Why is Ali saying this, right? So make sure you say the Rational Guard.
Yeah, this is what the Rational Guard said. You know, the comment that I read. So the thing is, you go and join these committees, and then make your voice known. If you're a woman, if you're into, almost everybody has something they can claim to be underprivileged about, right?
All right, guys, we have so many questions.
Yeah, I know, but this is important because we're actually talking about what to do about it, because nobody talks about what to do about it. There's something that you can do. You can provide a counter narrative. You can get on these committees. You can talk about how, as I'm a person of color. I come from the Muslim community. Everybody thinks I'm going to be like not drinking alcohol, but I do, because I don't believe in this stuff. There is diversity within communities, just as there is diversity between communities. Mm-hmm. You can make simple statements like that as a person of color, and they have to listen to you because you're a person of color, right?
Okay,
they have to. So do it. Get into these committees. Like, do something about it.
Okay, instead of just sitting there and I'm not going to answer because Ellie took all the time to answer that. Jim King saying, do you think part of it more? Wait, part of it
is more about populism, more than
is missing.
Right than so is this problem more about populism more than right versus left? The anti-woke feel like they are pushing back on the elite academic types. Example, someone like James Lindsay. I do think there is a flavor of that. There's a big flavor of that. Of it, and that criticism is not just from people like Tim Pool, who are like right-wing populists. Like John McWhorter is releasing chapters of his new book called The Elect, and it's themed around, like, you know, these people who act like they are these elect few with this, like, you know, precious knowledge, or or as if they're like self-appointed experts, or who has been elected into this group of, you know, perfect knowledge. It's very, I still need to get into that. It's really interesting, that book.
I do think it's a little bit right. I do think by the very nature of progressivism versus conservatism, because it means to conserve, it will be naturally more on the side of censorship, cancel culture, stifling dissent, authority, right? Because it's trying to conserve, and anything on the left is trying to change. So it is going to be, on average, more on the side of dissent, more on the side of rebellion, more on the side of change. So as much as you could see like wokeism acting like censorial and all of that, by the very nature of these movements, I think you're going to see more of it coming from the right. So this is a short answer from me. Joshua is saying, are you familiar with the critiques of identity politics and wokeness from Marxists like
Slavoj Zizek? Yeah,
I don't know.
No, I'm not either.
I'm very familiar with other Marxist critiques of this. Like, I talked to Marxist Soccer a lot. Well, now he's on Twitter, Perro en Español, if you want to go look up his handle. It's very interesting. Like, I actually love like anti-identity politics Marxists. They're so much fun to talk to because they're very different economically, but we don't understand. Oh my gosh.
Ghost Bunny was wrong. My answer. So Ghost Bunny is saying, I bet you anything the next question Armin is going to go out on a 5-minute rant. Nope. My answer was no. Short answer. Where were we? I lost my spot.
Yeah.
From Robert. Hi, Robert. Saying, pointing out woke ideas permeating mainstream culture is like a fish pointing to the water in which it's swimming. Other fish either don't see it or say, so what? Mainstream culture always moves. I think that's a very good way of putting it. Josh,
guys, sorry if we're not highlighting that many comments.
Can I say something about the Robert Hamilton comment? Like, I really like that. I think a lot of this stuff, like, for example, what Douglas Murray says about culture wars is it just feels like, the old people saying, "Oh, kids these days," which is just an age-old generational conflict. I'm not saying all of it's like that, but a lot of it is. It's just kids thinking, doing different things, experimenting, rebelling against the elders. It's just that the old people now just have Twitter accounts, right? So all your old sort of disgruntled uncles essentially just have Twitter accounts. And a lot of this is just a generational gap that happens in every generation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Joshua is saying, what do you think about attempts by congressional Democrats to pressure cable companies to stop airing channels that promote right-wing disinformation?
It's interesting.
Well, here's the thing. I think after the riots, it would be insane to think that Democrats are not going to try to take advantage of that political capital as much as they can. Of course they will. I'm not excusing it, but they will. And you can see that every side uses this. Like, I don't know, like if there's an attack, the fear, the hate is going to against the people who did that is going to be something that the other side is going to be. People know that this short-term memory. We have to get as much. Like, people are really angry right now. We have to get the return on our investment as much as we can. Everything, same thing happens on the other side as well, right?
Yeah,
and you have to 9/11.
Yeah, sorry about that. There's some historical context on this. This has happened forever. I mean, I remember when I grew up on hip hop and heavy metal rock music, and the PMRC was there, and Congress was trying to get them to put parent advisory stickers on all the albums, which they succeeded with. And so, I mean, this kind of thing has happened pretty much all the time. But right now, I think they're talking about OAN and they're talking about Newsmax and all of their stuff about how the election was stolen, and they don't want that disinformation out there because it's harmful. But you know what's been more effective than congressional Democrats pressuring them? Dominion, like the voting machines people. They sued them. And they had to
hit you with the book.
And they had to throw, the Mr. Pillow guy, Mike Lindell?
Yeah,
Newsmax had to throw him off
the
channel, right? You probably saw that clip, and I'm pretty sure he's fucking the pillows. Anyway, so they had to throw him off, right? Because they are afraid of the lawsuit. And there you go. That's way more powerful than congressional Democrats trying to pressure anybody to do anything. The Rational Guard. Oh, this is for me. In other words, use your POC privilege, Ali, the person of color. The biggest privilege in the 21st century is a sense of perpetual victimhood. If you feel like you're victimized, there's an oppression Olympics. The more oppressed you are, the more privileged you are on social media. And self-pity is the most malignant form of narcissism.
Ali was joking when he said that.
No, I was actually serious.
It's
they will use it to your advantage. Use it.
But you just criticize victimhood as malignant and whatever, and now you're saying use it.
Yeah, you use it because, I mean, the thing is, in these committees, if someone is sitting there trying to paint all of people of color, you can say as a person of color, as a brown guy, I have an advantage if I want to apply to an IT job, and I don't have a history of 400 years of slavery. And colonialism really wasn't bad as what this black person sitting next to me went through. I mean, those are things that you can say, that putting all people of color in one, people of color is actually.
You're gonna get kicked out of the equity office.
No, you're not, because you're a person of color. They can't.
No, I'm kidding.
No, they can't do that to him. He's an immigrant.
I'm an immigrant. I'm a person of color. I'm Muslim. I am oppressed.
Expose Hindutva were right. The Hindutva were correct. He's Muslim. Once a Muslim, always a Muslim. It's
I might as well be a fat, hairy, flat-chested woman. I mean, that's how it is. That's what my status. Actually, I think I am.
Okay, guys, we just 2 more questions. I'm just gonna focus not on the comments anymore. Just the questions only, not the comments. Sorry, guys.
Shuvo is saying, Are the woke and anti-woke groups a new phenomena, or do you think there has always been versions of woke versus anti-woke groups in the American global political zeitgeist? I think we've already talked about this, and I think there's always been some form of this happening.
Some form of this, but the woke is a bit of a new monster. It's weird. It's like, yeah.
I think
The rise has been, whenever you have an extreme sort of authority, like when you had the Trump government, then the woke thing became more.
Yeah.
Extremes legitimize extremes.
Well, okay, so it depends on what you mean new. So every time there's a popular movement, some people are going to jump on that and they're going to misuse it and take advantage of it. So that has been happening forever.
But I mean, it's specific though. Like woke versus anti-woke. I think of it. It gives me a puritanical flavor, right? So especially in American history, there's been a lot of cultural movements that have a puritanical flavor. Like the Red Scare, like, or witch trials, literally,
Mm-hmm.
Right. Actually, this leads to the final question very well. Shuvo is saying, is Hindutva anti-woke? Hindutva is the best example of seeing what happens when the right wing is in more control.
Yeah.
You want to see cancel culture under a right wing government? Just look at Hindutva.
But are they woke? That's
they are anti-woke, and they're anti-Muslim as well. I mean, you can see how people like try to. Hindutva has been using anti-woke narratives, anti-Islam narratives. Like they used to jump on these like. What we have noticed from a lot of right-leaning people in the West to jump on our bandwagons when we criticize Islam or when we criticize the woke and be like, why are you get off our bandwagon? Like, you guys don't belong here, right? We noticed that 100 times, 1,000 times more and from Hindutva. Like, this is basically the same thing. So technically, yes, but go ahead.
I don't think that they are anti-woke. I think they're just right-wingers. Like, they do I will say that they do.
That's what I mean, though.
They do push back against like the Indian left treating Islam with like kid gloves, basically, or being apologists for it, right? Like, there is that flavor, but they're just like.
But Susanna, that's the whole point of I was trying to bring from the very beginning, right? That you guys are not anti-woke is just now far right propaganda, not
that's
right
not
wing.
True though.
Right? What do you mean?
Like, I remember we were talking about the heterogeneity within people who are anti-woke.
I know, but
liberals.
so not sorry, shouldn't generalize like that. The problem with anti-woke, so I shouldn't say just, okay? The problem with the anti-woke is it's being hijacked by a lot of right-leaning, but mostly far right-leaning people, right? So just like the left, the very good movements from the left was hijacked by some people who are woke, right? The main problem right now with anti-SJW, that is not only it's being hijacked by right-leaning people, it's also being hijacked by a lot of far right people. Okay, so I don't mean to generalize. I'm glad that you're catching me every time I generalize and say like jest or like you're here, but like that's not true. Yes, you're right. Okay, but it is a major part of the anti-woke movement right now, and it's a huge problem. Okay, so if the left have to recognize that they have a problem because they have some Wokistani people that they need to call out, even if they're fringe, you have to. I think the anti-woke movement has a bigger problem because it doesn't. Maybe it's not all, but it's a huge portion of the anti-woke movement is now just pushing racism, pushing not anti-Islam narratives, but anti-Muslim bigotry.
Yeah.
Pushing using when you're pushing, for example, for trans rights. Okay, of course there's going to be sometimes ridiculous things happening. Like, how could it not? Okay, but these trans folks just jump on those and they make it seem like that's the entire trans right movements, right? Like, there's no movement that when you push for women's rights, when you push for gay rights, when you push for trans rights, it's not going to be clean. It's not going to be all 100% correct, everything they're pushing for. Yeah. There's going to be fringe things that is going to happening that is going to be ridiculous. How could it not? Okay, do you think like should we have abandoned the women rights movement because some women were just hated men as a whole? Like, of course we're gonna have some women that are like
It's
that.
a
How can we not?
whole. A whole with a W. Okay, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry,
I'm gonna cancel Ellie. I'm canceled Ellie.
I'm oppressed. He's canceling me.
I'm canceling.
Do you see this audience?
Maybe you know what? Cancel culture. Maybe it's good.
Okay, listen, guys.
Of course, it's the Aryan causing this violence. In
the only thing I have to do,
Okay.
I'm immigrant Muslim. The only thing I have to do is go trans. That's it. But the only time I will do that is if I'm ever sentenced to a life term in prison, because that way I don't have to go to the mail. But never mind. Okay, guys.
In seriousness, people are fighting trans protections in California because of that exact idea. It's a mess. California's a mess.
Everyone, thank you for
supporting.
Josh was saying that this was a bit of a Freudian slip.
Okay, guys, let's go before Ali kills us all with his dad jokes. Thank you so much for being in the live chat, because our patrons, if you want to be in the live chat with us and talk to us while we do these live streams, become a patron. Link is in the description. If you're listening to this later, or if you just want to support, you know what, I don't want to be in the live chat, but I just want to support the show. You guys seem to be onto something, and I like supporting content creators that make some sense. Okay, so link in the description. Support us on Patreon. If you are a patron and you're listening to this later, consider joining us live on when we do these, so we could read your comments. Okay. Anyways, we're gonna have a Q&A coming soon, so that's gonna be public. End of the month Q&A.
In 2 days.
It's gonna probably in 2 days.
Every
Okay.
28.
So yes.
All
right.
Yeah. Thank you all very much. And again,
Thank
the patron, you can become a patron for as little as $1 a month.
Yes,
Say that $1 a month gets you like 5 episodes, video, hours and hours of conversation, being able to ask
And
questions.
the backlog.
Yeah, and the full backlog of everything. So
and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Yes, search for Secular Jihadists on YouTube. All right, bye.
The Secular Jihadists have been made possible thanks to the Illuminati and the covert support of Israel and the CIA. That's what we have been told, but we haven't received our checks yet. If you like what we do, please support us. Share the podcast with your friends. Write and tweet us with topic and guest suggestions. Or head over to secularjihadist.com and give $1 or more for exclusive access to live video. Have your questions read and answered on the air, and more. Till next time, may the flying spaghetti monster be with you.